Okay, good evening. We'll call to order the regular monthly meeting of the City of Helotes Planning and Zoning Commission. It is September the 5th at 7:02 p.m. I'd ask the commission secretary to call the roll, please.
Greg Michelle.
Here.
Jason Whiteman.
Here.
Alex Blues here. Ann Caraway.
Here.
Buck Russell.
Here.
And we also have from staff, Michael Gallardo and David Cato from City Council. We do not have any citizens to be heard tonight, so we can move to our first item of action, which is discussion and action on the minutes of the regular meeting from the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting of August 1, 2023, which we now have before us. If there are any edits or revisions that need to be made, this would be the time to call them to our attention. And if not, a motion would be appropriate.
I move to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission dated August 1st, 2023.
Submitted, right?
As submitted.
Great. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. So the motion is to approve the minutes of the August 1, 2023 meeting as submitted. All in favor, please signal aye.
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 Opposed, minutes are approved. And we'll note for the record, Michael, just that we need the formal copy correct to sign for later. Our next item tonight, number 5, is discussion and action on the request by the Helotes Economic Development Corporation for approval of a sign reface under Code of Ordinance, Chapter 98, Zoning, Section 72, Old Town Helotes Special District, Subparagraph G7, Creative Sign Review, to update the external facing of an existing sign that identifies the Old Town Helotes Special District. And it is located at 14392 Bandera Road. And we've got the applicant before us tonight, who I'm sure would like to say a few things about it. Though I will ask, Michael, do you have anything that you want to add at the outset here?
I don't.
Okay. But if you just name, business address.
Glenn Goolsby, Executive Director of the Helotes Economic Development Corporation. Address is 12682 FM 1560 West, Suite 105, Helotes, Texas, 78023.
Perfect, thanks.
Man, that's the first time I got to do that. So thank you.
Impressed you know it. That's good.
Yeah. No, apologies for not making the last meeting, but we did sit down and listen to the feedback from both planning and zoning and from city council. Went back to my board to try to see if we could come to more amenable design for everyone. And even listening to some of the input from local businesses in Old Town, they do see that as one of their, I guess, gateway signs, for lack of a better definition, to really denote the area. So I did in the packet include what the original design that was approved. Drawing a blank of the year, I think that was 2011. And then the one that we redid in 2017. And then kind of what we're now proposing for 2023. So I know the EDC board really wanted to keep part of our logo and branding that we've established with the windmill, somewhat similar to what the city of Helotes has in their logo as well. And then visit. So we just ended up making Old Town Helotes in a relatively large font across the front, and then shopping, dining, entertainment. And then since that is a public parking lot for Old Town Helotes for the businesses, that's something the EDC pays the property owner to keep as a public parking lot outside of floor concerts, which he does operate a paid lot. Then we have that kind of directional signage on there as well.
I will open it for questions. This is two-sided, correct?
It is.
And let me open to others who have comments or questions.
No, it seems like it's going back in the exact same footprint. No change in
Yes.
the width, the height. I mean, the parking is going to be in the exact same area, and the Old Town Helotes is going to be in the exact same area.
Yes, sir.
Exactly.
Jason, anything?
I think it's an improved design. I like the fact that it incorporates words describing, what's going on, what promoting the town, shopping, dining, entertainment. I essentially see it as a refacing of the previous sign, and no objections.
Yeah, and I really, as you know, I was at that council meeting and I did have a problem with it not including Old Town. So now that you have, I really like it. And I also was glad to hear when you explained about the branding, because I can understand, I like the windmill and all that, and I think that that satisfies everybody because you have the branding and then you have the old town. So I like it. Thank you for working on that.
What they said. Thank you.
And although we don't have the image of it, the original one we saw 3 months ago
Yes.
was this same sign minus Old Town, if I'm not
Correct.
mistaken, right?
Yeah.
And the term of lease, you mentioned that we lease
Mhm.
this, the city does from a property owner, is what, is there a term on it? Is it a 3-year lease? Is there-
Yeah, so the lease for the sign itself, so there's 2 separate leases on the property.
So the sign one, not the parking.
Okay, yeah, the sign one is my understanding is up. It needs to be renewed right now. The way it's typically structured, it's an annual contract that auto renews for, I want to say it was 3 or 4 years, and then needs to be reapproved through a subsequent contract. So I've sent that over to the city administrator for the city to approve, because it is an agreement between the city and the property owner.
And there's no indication that there's any issue.
No, not at all. Yeah, in fact, I think in the packet, there was a letter where the property owner approved the
Yep, 829.
sign.
Thank you. Okay. Any further comments or questions?
No.
If not, I would invite a motion on this item and point out this is a recommendation item that goes to city council.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I will make a recommendation or a motion to recommend approval on discussion and action on a request by Helotes Economic Development Corporation for approval of a sign reface under Municipal Code of Ordinances, Chapter 98 zoning, Section 98-72, Old Town Helotes Special District, subparagraph G7, creative sign review to update the external facing of an existing sign that identifies the Old Town Helotes Special District located at 14392 Bandera Road.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second that motion.
Discussion of the motion. Anything further, Jason? Yeah.
None.
Anyone else? So the motion is to recommend approval of the request by the HEDC for the sign reface under Code of Ordinance, Chapter 98, Section 72, that is zoning, Old Town Helotes Special District, subparagraph G7, creative sign review to update the external facing of an existing sign that identifies the Old Town Helotes Special District at 14392 Bandera Road. All in favor of this motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Great, thank you all. And this will go, Glenn, to council, I presume at the next meeting, which is next week.
It'll be either the 14th or the 28th.
Okay, so to be determined which one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next item, number 6, discussion and action on a request by Alamo Sign Solutions for the installation of signage at Chevron Express Lube, a new preventive auto care business in the city's ETJ, 10865 Shanefield Road, to include the following: 2 business name wall signs pursuant to code, Chapter 66, Section 51, that's signs, commercial signs projecting wall and hanging or in or on windows, and 6 service bay wall signs with associated size and number variances pursuant to Code of Ordinances, Chapter 66, signs, 51, Section 51, commercial signs projecting wall and hanging in or on windows. Michael, in addition to what you all put in the packet for us, do you have anything to add to this?
No, other than the representative for the sign company is not here. There are quite a number of signs. Would y'all like me to go through them, or you just want to work through them as you go along? How do you want to?
Why don't just, if you give us a top level sort of overview of the 8 signs, and then if we need to divide it out as a motion, we can do that. And perhaps pointing out where the variances would come in.
Okay.
Thanks.
So we'll start off of Shanefield Road. We have, one of the major signs is going to be A1 and A2. So off of Shanefield Road, you have A1. A2 is on the pedestrian way. Kind of
Those are, to interrupt you for a second, those are the wall signs of the business name.
correct. And I'll
Thank you.
show them to you right now.
Yep.
So this is A1 facing Shanefield Road.
Okay.
A2 is in the middle kind of like facing the pedestrian way. I can give you an aerial view of that. So that's the wrong one. So this is Shanefield Road. And if you turn the corner there, this is where this is A1. On the other side is going to be A2 in the middle.
Okay, and that is not a variance because it's one on each side.
Correct.
Okay, so
So-
that, yeah,
Per the linear footage on the front and per the linear footage on the side, they're both compliant.
okay.
So then we'll kind of move on to, well, let me just kind of go back to here where all my B signs are. So this B1 sign is going to be an exit only sign, but it's wall mounted. Okay.
Okay.
Then you have B2 and 3. Or B2 and 3 are going to be the ones that say oil change. And it'll make a little bit more sense when we go down to the pictures of those. Then B4 and 5 are going to be auto care. Okay. B6 here is a sign that says wait for attendant. So notice that the rest of them are all there with the exception of the exit only sign in the front. So let me see if I can kind of give you a visual of that. So we're in the middle here, this is Shanefield. This is the wall mounted sign right there that says exit only. Okay, so that's B1. So the rest are going to be laid out on this side here.
Mhm.
So you have B2 and B3 right here. They'll say oil change. B4 and 5 are going to say auto care. And then right in here is going to be your B6. So the total of 8 of them. Wait for attendant. Does that make sense?
And the
Yes,
variances come in, Michael, with the total number of signs.
Correct. So A1 and A2, we're good there. Total number of signage, per the number of square footage, the total in square footage, and as far as like whether it matches linear feet, we're all good there. So then when we turn the corner here, B2, B3, these are all going to be where your variances come in. Number 1, for the number of signs, it's going to exceed the 2. And then secondly, it's going to be exceeding the maximum of 100 square feet.
On that
On
side.
squares, yes,
but
altogether.
these are really more directional too than, I mean, they're not like they're asking for 8 signs to advertise their
Correct.
name. It's
Correct.
just like, we can imagine the chaos if they didn't have these signs.
Correct. And
So,
in my conversation with the sign company, she was just saying that this is kind of like an expectation for a franchise. This is kind of like, they try to model that. So that's the reason for the
I see.
many signs, I guess.
All right, y'all having heard that, let me open it up for further comment or question. Alex?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I think in this instance, we have to be consistent with what we've done in the past, and that we've had multiple other businesses in the past that have had multiple bays where they've had entrance signs, some with numbers over the bay, some with a name over the bay. And we've basically said, no, that's still too many because they're a sign. And while I agree with Ann in her comment where they seem to be directional signs, the wait for attendant and the exit only to me would be seeming like a directional sign, except that they're now on the wall, which is not normally where you would find a directional sign, which we would then not include as part of their request for the signage, right? So we've had a lot of businesses that have a sign, you know, this way, exit only, like in drive-throughs and things like that. We don't consider them as additional signs because they're not on the building. They're directional, they're parking lot directions. So when I first saw this, I thought, well, yeah, it's nice to have a sign over every bay, but 15 square feet, they're what, 1.5 feet tall and 10 feet wide? They're as wide as the bay almost. The sign seems to be considerably more. And not only are we debating the question about the number of signs, but the total square footage of the signs exceeds it as well. I understand the concern about having some concept of the fact that the bays are different parts of their business. One has to do with oil, or 2 have to do with oil changes, and 2 have to do with auto. I would be more amenable if there would be, and of course, there's no one here to talk about it, but I mean, I don't know that I think it's a big stretch for us to go with 8 signs when ordinance allows 2. Granted, the 2 big signs they have make perfect sense. One faces the road, one faces the very long portion of the building. But if the wait for attendant and the or the exit or exit only were not considered, but directional signs, maybe put them on a pole and put them in front of there, right by the door, something of that nature, that would then eliminate that. But I don't think that they need 4 signs for 4 bays when the 2 bays on either side are exactly the same thing. They could put one single sign in the middle above the 2 doors together. One says auto, oil change, and the other one says auto work. And that would cut the signs down considerably. Still would be a variance, but we don't have the applicant. I know we have a lot of folks who come here and say, well, that's what my franchise requires. It's the only thing I can accept. And then you go to other cities and you see that they do variations to it everywhere they go. So I don't buy that argument anymore. There was a lot of places that have come in and said, no, this is what our franchise look is like, and we have to do this. And then they've even bowed to some of our concerns and questions. And you go into other areas and they're very willing to do it if they get that. So I don't feel that we can, certainly without discussion with the applicant, I don't feel confident granting all the variances being requested here. Thank you.
Ann,
Okay, well, I'm looking at the size of them. It looks like the exit only and the wait for attendant are only 4.3.
2 by 2.
Yeah, and the other ones are 15 feet. So I see your point there. I mean, I definitely do agree that there has to be signage saying what space to go in for what. I mean, I know when I take my car somewhere, it's just like I'm looking which outlet, do I go to? So, but I agree with you, they could be smaller, and it's not a bad idea to have one over those 2 entryways. And if the 4.3 is okay for the other one, it seems like it would be okay for those. Yeah, it is kind of hard with nobody here. Did they say that they were gonna come and just didn't make it, or they did nothing?
No, I didn't get a response.
Okay. I do think some direction is needed. I don't know that not mounting it is gonna help it any. That might be in the way. But yeah, I could go for the smaller. I agree with you on the size and maybe putting one there.
Jason or Buck?
I will sort of second what a lot of us have said. I think we have approved one similar use where we allowed numbers over the doors. I think is directional to say, yeah, you need to go to number 1 or number 5 or whatever the case may be. And they were obviously very small signs, because just a single number, a little, a foot by foot or less square. I kind of looked at it as like traffic control signs, where it seems like we have a little bit of discretion, to approve things as long as they're not, I think, 3 square feet or so, to kind of direct traffic within the campus, if you will, to use the term. I can kind of see where they might need to put them on the building. The site is kind of tight. I guess they could pole mount them right in front of the building, but I don't know that makes a whole lot of difference in terms of, if they're right in front of the building or right on the building. It seemed like the room was a little bit of an issue, the way that it's kind of hemmed in, and there's not a lot of room in front of the building. If that's 40 feet wide, I can't imagine it's 40 feet deep, and it seems like you're just kind of pulling out there. So I don't know that would help a lot, but to put a pole mounted sign, I think it might be, taking up some room that might be needed for circulation. But yeah, I think it's too many and too many square feet.
I agree that it's too many square feet. They already had the wait for attendant. My first reaction was, okay, well, it's kind of a safety thing. Where do I go? Which way? Confusion in the parking lot. There are customers who may be on foot in the parking lot. There are attendants who are going to be on foot. But then they have the sign that also says wait for attendant, who's going to be guiding them in regardless. So the customers, I don't feel, are going to be going in or making a garage selection on their own. So I agree with the commissioners.
Does our code make a distinction between directional and traffic control? One and the
No.
same.
I mean, so traditionally, we've always gone with directional traffic control signs on a pole, similar to like what we did with Texas grounds. So that's why these are classified as wall signs.
Directional and traffic control are
On a pole.
on a pole. Okay.
And that's why my comment was that because they've got put on a wall, they now fell into the category of a wall sign.
So I guess my question to Commissioner Blue is the distinction that you're making between wall mounted and I'll just call it freestanding, for lack of a better term. Why is that, in your view, a significant?
Because if it was a directional sign and it was on a pole and you could see there is room to put it there because that's the case, but then it takes it out of the need for variance because directional signage is pretty much automatically approved by staff. We've approved them in multiple locations already, and they're pretty well done by staff. And so that would basically eliminate one potential variance that we would have to grant. And to Commissioner Buck's comment, I don't know of any mechanic shop, oil change place, auto shop of any sort that lets you just drive into a bay without talking to somebody first. So that seems a little redundant. I get the whole concept of safety, but I don't know. I think we've all been ingrained to not just say, hey, there's an empty one and I boom right into the bay and on its way. No, you always wait and I've never seen anybody do it.
Well,
but that's why.
I'm sorry, but I don't know.
But no,
if that's
I
just
get that.
me,
But again, that seems like it's in the mode of directional and instructional as opposed to advertising, which is why I feel it's a little different. The problem is if we allow it on the wall, we got to call it a wall sign. And now we're forced to either grant a variance for something that we don't like to always do, right? Because they always come back to us and such. But aside from that, I still think the biggest variance is the other signs that are way too large, in my opinion, because they push the total square footage above as well as the number above. But I do get that it's important to know where to queue up for the bays. You know, I'm going on an oil change. I don't have to back up and then completely go to the opposite side of the building, but I don't think they need 4 15 square foot signs to identify that.
I think one of the questions is, and this is the big distinction, it's not advertising. It's trying to direct or, you know, give some kind of, I mean, I know when I go to Toyota or something and there's all these, right, bays and I'm like frantic going, which way do I go? You know, so I love that kind of direction. But I guess my question to you guys who have been here a while is, have you ever had a situation where the directional sign has to be mounted? Because in this situation, I don't see the how convenient or safe it would be not to mount them. And so, first of all, it's not about advertising. It's a little bit of both. It's directional, but it has to be mounted. So how have y'all dealt with this before? I mean, we could make them smaller and then grant that variance, but I think it's necessary that they're mounted. I don't see that they can be done.
Which are you referring to, if I might ask?
She's talking about the wait for attendant.
Wait for
The
attendant
oil, no, I was
exit
looking
on
at
it?
the oil change and
Oh, I'm
the
sorry.
auto all of them, you know. You're saying, I know some of them are, 2 of them are 4.3, but the other ones that are 15. Okay. In the past, have y'all never had the situation where it's directional and not advertising and it has to be mounted?
Well, oftentimes these are master sign plans, and so that sort of governs in certain situations. I think that we have seen, yes, we have had cases where there have been a need for more than there have been a variance granted
Okay.
based on a request, not exactly like this by any means. I think Commissioner Blue and others' point about the size and number of the bay signs is reasonable. The question I'm struggling over is, are we setting some type of precedent
Yeah.
by approving a wall sign that says that's directional? Does that matter? Or does that set a precedent that somebody else can come in and say essentially, well, you gave them a variance for their wall sign. I want mine to not be directional, but to be, you know, Tuesday specials, you know? Does that, are we boxing?
I even see
ourselves in that way?
the exit only could be placed on the cement. It can be painted as a stop here line, kind of how it would be at a normal traffic intersection. in red, exit only, do not enter. Or they could have some kind of directional lines to the bays. Does code allow
Yeah.
signage on the private property
Probably.
like that?
Well, I think, if I may, Mr. President, Chairman, excuse me, I've just promoted you to president. We have this sort of situation with other businesses. The scenario we have here is we have a business that really, I don't think our code really intended for a business with that many multiple entrances right next to each other, right? So for example, what if a Walmart type of business came and said, well, we want signage that directs our people to which door they have to come in. So we want grocery, we want pharmacy, we want lawn and garden, we want entertainment, we want this, we want that. And you now all of a sudden have 15 signs because the building, half of this building is where those parts of the store are, and the other half is where those parts of the store. And now they say, well, we need to direct you where to park in our parking lot so you know which door is closer to what you're coming for. And they want 9 signs. We would probably say, no, don't, right? We wouldn't want that. Secondly, and of course the applicant's not here, but if you had a sign that was one sign above the 2 doors together, then it would make clear that that side of the business is this. We still have to grant a variance because it's still more signs than we allow. In fact, the allocation, anything other than the 2 big signs is a variance because they're only allowed 2.
Yeah, but gotta see, can't see the forest for the trees. I mean, that wasn't the purpose of our limiting the signs. So I agree with you. I mean, they could even put them in the middle and say oil change, arrow that way, and then underneath it, auto repair this way. I mean, I think there has to be some kind of direction, but I agree with you that it doesn't have to be this big. But I don't think by granting them and allow a variance to do something, maybe reducing the size and all this, that we are going to set precedent, because this is just obvious that we have to have some direction, I think.
Buck or Jason, anything more?
No.
So I might suggest, we have our liaison is here and is hearing this and can represent the council when it comes up. I might suggest a motion that, as my sense is, the sentiment seems to be in favor of reducing the number of the bay signage. Whoever proposes the motion could propose what they wish for the directional, but I do think there's a legitimate case to be made for the directional signage being, I would call it non-precedent setting and appropriate, given that you could point out to a safety element to it. But I would defer to whoever makes a motion, and whatever we do here, again, council will make the determination. So, and if it's easier, we can separate this into 2 separate motions, A and B, because I don't think we had any conversation about A.
I would go along with the recommendation to put just the 1 sign, oil change over here, like you were saying, in the middle, and reduce that size. It's so hard to see how well you can see it from the distance.
Yeah, the pictures don't help much.
That's the thing. How big is that Chevron Express Lube in the middle there? What did we say it was? How many feet is that?
45.
45.
Oof,
That's
yeah.
big.
Yeah, that's huge.
Alex, you want to take a crack at it?
Well, Mr. Chairman, with your permission, I'd like to make the first motion to be discussing, to recommend approval to City Council for item 6, discussion of and action on the request by Alamo Sign Solutions for the installation of signage at Chevron Express Lube at 10865 Shanefield Road, portion A only.
As submitted.
As submitted.
Is there a second for that motion?
I'll second.
Jason, further discussion about that item, that motion, Alex or Jason?
In and of itself, those signs appear to comply, and
Right.
no issue with them in and of themselves.
So the motion is to recommend approval of the request by Alamo Sign Solutions for the installation of signage at Chevron Express Lube in the ETJ at 10865 Shanefield Road, in particular, item A, which is the 2 business names, wall sign, wall signs pursuant to code 6651, signs, commercial signs projecting wall and hanging or in around windows. All in favor, signal aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Item B. You want to keep going now?
I'm going to make a motion. I'm not sure that everyone will agree with the outcome of it, but we'll take a look here. Okay, so I move to recommend to City Council on item 6B, discussion of an action on a request by Alamo Sign Solutions for the installation of signage at Chevron Express Louvre located at 10865 Shanefield Road. And I'm going to give me a second to find sign numbers.
Michael can project it to, I don't know if you could read that. It's a little small.
You want to use that?
To-
You want the pictures?
Grant, no, I've got it in front of me, I think.
You do? Okay.
To grant the variance to include signs B6 and B1 as submitted and as noted, directional signage,
Mhm.
to approve sign B2 and B4, each square footage not to exceed 8 square feet. And recommend to the applicant that they be centered between the two doors. So here's my reasoning if,
Before you finish out 3 and 5.
You wanted to leave?
And not approve B3 and B5.
Okay.
Thank you. So I've got a motion. Is there a second for the motion?
I second that motion.
All right, Alex.
So if I may, if you'll notice that B2 is the sign that basically states oil change. B4 is the sign that says auto care. If you look at the individual signs as projected on the building, the wording takes up less than half the space of that actual sign. So 8 square feet being just over half the square foot of their original proposed sign would still allow the words to be the same size as before, which is why I chose 8 square feet as my recommendation to council for approval of the variance. And as I mentioned, with the recommendation to the applicant that they center the sign between the two doors and above it so that it identifies still that.
Now, what would the total square?
Wait, so did you second that?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, go ahead. Thank you.
Does anybody figure out the math on, then what would the total square footage be? It might fall under the 100. even.
It won't fall under the 100, but it doesn't have to, does it?
No, but
We're still.
Well, we're dropping to 15.5 square feet, that's 31. And we're dropping about 7 square feet on the other two that are being approved. So there's another 14. So it drops about 45 square feet off the total.
Still though.
so it's just over 100.
So-
I mean, right now it's at one, before it was at 150.1. And
This would take it to about 106.
So let me interject here if I can, Ann, for 1 second.
Sure.
We normally have leeway to exceed square footage without a variance.
Up to 25%, but just since we're not actually doing the approval, it doesn't really matter. The
Well,
council can do
that's,
whatever they want.
council could do that.
Yeah, council can do.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Okay. Any discussion, Buck?
No.
Jason?
No, I mean, it's, I feel your concerns and agree with your concerns. I think by, recommending a variance only, we're not setting a precedent saying, this is a one-time deal for just you. And, anybody else wants to try this, if come a variance, and we can shoot it down if we don't feel it's as warranted as it is here.
I would add the one that concerns me to ensure that we're clear on the rationale are the two directional signs that are wall mounted and hence part of this conversation. If they were not wall mounted, they would not be part of it. But either way, they're, I think, justifiable and for that purpose. So the motion here is to recommend approval of the request by Alamo Sign Solutions for the signage at Chevron Express Lube in the Helotes ETJ at 10865 Shanefield Road. And this is item B, and it specifically is in relation to offering or recommending approval of variance of signs B1 and 6 as submitted, and noting they are directional signs. Signs B2 and B4 with the square foot not to exceed 8 square feet each. And to recommend that they be centered over the bays. And that is it. There's no approval is being offered for B3 and B5.
Correct.
So all in favor of that motion, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Great. And Michael, you'll let the applicant know
Correct.
when this goes to council. Okay, that brings us to the conclusion of our agenda. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Do it. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor of adjourning, signal aye.
Aye.
Opposed,
Remembrance
7:39.
of Ron.
Yes.
We're adjourned. Yes, thank you. Please catch your light. And thank you for your